Right, rolling on camera.
All right, cool, awesome. One, two, three. Welcome back, guys. It's the Brothers Geek Out episode. This is our Geek Out session. I've got the lovely Rob back on here. Rob's a regular now. How's it going, dude? You all right?
I'm a regular.
Oh, I'm
I'm a
sorry.
regular. What a wonderful introduction. I'm a regular. Great. Makes me sound like an alcoholic. I'm a regular here. Great. No, but I
I
think
did not mean it in that way. I love
there is
Rob
a lot of
completely.
truth. No, of course. Of course. Of course. No, no. It's a pleasure to be back always. It's always a pleasure to be on here. And do you know what? It's funny. This episode in particular almost feels like a mission for us, for both of us. This one. Do you know what I mean when I say
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. It does. It does. Definitely. Definitely a mission, bro.
I mean, this is. Do you know what I think is going to be fascinating? This is either going to be like a full-on rant, or this is going to be what I expect it to be anyway. Just like you and I doing our typical voice note rants.
Mhm.
But this will be like 40 plus minutes. And my
Exactly.
God, have we got a lot to talk about? My God,
We've
have we
got
got a lot to talk about?
we've got so much. So, guys, we're gonna cover Joker Foliador. Foliador? Foliador. Foliador. Is
Fully
it
I do.
Foliador? Foliador. Sorry.
Fully I
See?
do.
So, like, the name itself was quite comfortable, complicated for people who's not good in that language, which is myself. But I'm gonna let Rob take over because he's got some interesting thoughts on it, which kind of resonated with me because because you can word it much better than I did. Because me and Gilman just got off a podcast now talking about it,
Right.
and his one had a lot of F words, the the S letter word, and foul language, and he was really upset. And but you know
Right.
me, I always see the positives in things. I like to see the creative craft that are in things, but sometimes creative craft can become a mess. And I think we both agree. And I even said it in my review that it's this movie, like great performances, great direction, great cinematography, even great music moments. But the movie is actually madness. It doesn't make no sense. And in the end of my quote, it says, "This movie is madness." Some people may
Yeah.
take that as "Oh my God, that means it's amazing." But no, I genuinely meant it was my first initial thought when I came out. Because the great thing about being in what we do and getting invited to events is that we can feel that buzz and energy when you're there. And I'm not
Mm.
blowing my own trumpet here. I went to the red carpet event, which is absolutely amazing and got me into the hype of everything and came out with the hype of everything. But literally sitting down
Mm.
with my younger brother and telling him, I came out saying it's okay. But sitting on this train now, looking at you and talking about it, what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? Like that
Mm.
first one is a masterpiece. I the guy won
Mm.
an Oscar for it because of his performance. I think one of Todd Phillips's best movies.
Mm.
But yeah, anyway, you're not here to listen to me. We
I mean,
got before actually go on, Rob. I'm gonna let you take over.
yeah, go on. No, go on, go on, go on, go on. You say what you're going to say.
I
Say what
love
you're
the
going to say.
t-shirt, dude, because I got the same t-shirt.
Oh, of course,
Well,
dude,
but
of
today
course.
I'm repping the turtles today, so
Oh no, that's a great t-shirt, by the way.
thank
That's
you,
a
man.
great t-shirt.
Band of Brothers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love
I
it.
love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
yeah. I'm wearing for listeners, the DeLorean blueprints, just for the listeners right there. If you're
so
watching
good.
on video, then it's just me showing off the t-shirt. Um, um, yeah. Do you know what? This movie's been on my mind throughout the entire day, and do you know what? I can say this with confidence now, with pure confidence. Joker Folie à Deux is RoboCop 2. And if you've seen RoboCop 2, I think people will know exactly what I mean. In that you do something, and he's laughing. He knows already, and he knows exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. So I feel like I should explain,
Oh, of
obviously,
course
but
you
I
have to.
want
The
to.
listeners have to.
So, um, first of all, I mean, I will apologize in advance because there will probably be some swearing in this because for me, it is just I can't contain myself for this one, really. I mean, um, I remember. So just to jump back really quickly, you invited me to come and talk about this film because, and I remember, and I said to myself, I don't know if I should because I might get cancelled for what I say about this film. Like they may never get me back on these screenings or anything. They might just say, no, no, don't bring this guy along because he'll give them a 45 or 40 whatever long minute rant about the film because of how whatever it is, but. I'm going to reiterate one thing I just said, which is Joker Folie à Deux is basically the RoboCop 2 of now. And what I mean by that is you hit a home run with your first film because you know exactly what you're doing.
Mhm.
And sadly, with this film, it is a beautifully made, glorified cash grab that doesn't know what it wants to fucking say. And
Mm.
ultimately, it's an ultimate clusterfuck of a movie. And I was astonished because I went and saw it with a friend of mine called Emma, and we were both completely stunned, but not in the good sense of being stunned. We were both completely just really taken aback by what we had just seen. And again, I reiterate the positives. It is a
Mm.
beautifully crafted film from a cinematography point of view. Like Lawrence Sher has clearly
Mm.
got a bigger budget to work with. And that's the thing. Do you know what I can't stress this enough. Just because you've got a bigger budget doesn't mean it's going to be a better movie. And
That's right.
my God, is that you have to stress that so much, like within filmmaking. Um, and I mean this with care, obviously, as well. Um, so with the cinematography, it's very beautifully crafted. It's clearly homaging very like a lot of classic Hollywood um musicals like
Hmm.
Top Hat and the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers era, and even
Yeah.
some bits of like Singing in the Rain. And you've got the Umbrellas of Cherbourg, even referenced for God's sake. And this is the thing when it's referencing and doing those musical montages and those performances, I actually thought the film was working. I
Mm.
thought it was working for me. Now, that's the divisive thing. I think for most people going into this, they're thinking, oh my God, it's a musical. Oh my God, it's this. Oh my God, like this is not going to work. When I first heard that this was going to be a musical, I thought it was an inspired choice, especially
Mm.
when I saw the very first teaser and it was the silhouettes of Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, or should I say Arthur Fleck? I mean, we'll get to that. Don't worry.
Mhm.
Um, and Lady Gaga, Harley Quinn, and it was to the song Cheek to Cheek from Top Hat. And I was like, oh my God, if they do the Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire of Mad Love, this is going to be an inspired movie. This is
Mhm.
a comic book movie that's going to go to extra levels. And it's so frustrating because we get elements of that in this film. But then what we get with this film is a central lack of identity. And that is something I did not expect with this follow up. With so much money spent on this film, with so much riding on this film, to give us what they've given us,
Mm.
which in its own way feels like a confused hybrid of a musical courtroom drama, it just doesn't work. It really doesn't. And it's a shame because, as I said, it's a beautifully made film, and I applaud. And this is what I want to really stress really quickly
Mm.
before we get into the big run. I applaud everyone that worked on this film because it's a beautifully made film,
Yeah, yeah,
and
100%.
even
100%.
the
100%.
performances as well. We'll get to the performances in more detail, but even the actors are doing the best work that they can do with the script that they have. And trust me, we will get back to the script as well. But for me, as an overall thought with this film, and I tie it back in with the RoboCop 2 analogy, and I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that
Definitely, definitely.
which will never
I
go
still,
on the poster, by the way. That will never go on the poster. Rob Ailing said it's the RoboCop 2 of Joker movies.
I'd love that.
Um,
That's
yeah, I
interesting
know. I think,
marketing there.
yeah,
That's interesting marketing there because
yeah.
I love that. But I totally agree with you, dude. I totally understand. Like
Mm.
the thing
But it
about the
is
yeah,
ultimately a mean-spirited movie.
mm,
It's, I mean, from what people said about the first film,
yeah,
about it being mean-spirited in some capacity, at least it had something to say. At least it had
yes,
direction, clear
yes,
direction.
yes.
And it's funny you mentioned that Todd Phillips did a really good, like it's directed really well. I would actually honestly say that it's a film that's been directed by somebody that maybe didn't want to film. Other interesting position that you have to ask yourself with this film, because ultimately it feels like a very mean spirited film, and especially towards the end, and that is exactly what RoboCop 2 is for me. Just because the budget is higher doesn't mean we have to go more violent or more
Mm,
meaner in our approach to our storytelling. And with that approach, you sometimes lose focus of what was at the core, the thing that kept it the most engaging, which was the only thing that was, that made it special in the first place, was that it was a singular story with one thing. Alex Murphy's arc ended at the end of RoboCop. He was resurrected and he became human again. Even
mm,
despite the fact he's a metal android on the outside, he's got a soul again.
mm.
Where else do you go from there? And RoboCop 2 decides to go in a very dangerous direction with its mean-spirited, depictions of. Anyway, I'm trying. It's not about RoboCop 2, but the same can go for here with Joker Folie à Deux, which is just because you've got more money, just because you've got um, more characters, and you can throw out the violence even further, which it really doesn't, by the way, when you really
No, it
think about
does
it. But
no,
it is a
it
much
doesn't.
darker film.
Very, very,
But
very.
by the by the end, I was just thinking, why don't I care? And I never thought that about the first film.
No, of course, of course, and I think that's the important part that we got from that first one, which this was a sequel that we did not want and did not
Mm.
deserve to be treated
Mm.
in this way because
Mm.
regardless of what they did in the first one, because I feel like I still didn't want to know who Joker was. I kind of love that mystery of not
Mm.
knowing who he is, even though that they have broken it out in the comic books and it's like mystery, man. The magic about movies was the mystery that you leave the audience behind with, that they go to
Yep.
bed thinking, did that top fell down or not? Was it still turning? Was it was wobbling,
Mm.
or not knowing the background of where a xenomorph came from, or
Mm.
where the
Mm.
predator. Why is the predator doing this, and where's come from? I don't need to know that. He's scary, and it's a great action adventure that you're taking me on. I don't need to know the backgrounds of it,
Yeah.
and I think as we are growing in cinema, I feel like
Mm.
cinema has dumbed us down a little bit because they explain way too much to me, and it's like I really just want to sit there and kind of get lost in the world and forget about my reality for a moment and kind of just
Mm.
believe in
Mm.
this. And I don't need no background story where the never ending story book came from because it's actually got blank pages in there. You're actually
Yeah.
making the story up in your mind. And really and truly, it was a boy grieving over his lost mother.
Yeah.
It gets deep, because as an adult, you watch it and you're like, oh my God, this is a totally different movie from when I watched it when I was 8 years old. So like
Mm.
it's that
Mm.
mystery that it can transcend across generation and time, and movies don't have that thing no more. And it makes me wonder what the people that the performers in this movie when they read a script like that, what have they got and what
Mm.
translates onto the screen? That's difficult. That's
Mm.
very
Mm.
difficult. Uh,
It is
yeah.
difficult, and I think you hit the nail on the head about one thing, which is sometimes because let's put it out there, the people that are working on this film are very smart people. They're very clear on their choices that they do as artists. Like
Mm.
this is the first sequel that Joaquin Phoenix has ever done.
I
You
know.
know, he wouldn't have come back if it didn't speak something to him. So
Hmm.
either there was something in the script, or I dare I say it, and I hope this wasn't the case because I don't see him as that kind of person. Maybe money spoke. Maybe money talked at this point because again, I have to be really careful because I mean, there's no point really us even asking the question, was this really ever needed? Because the fact of the matter is, we've got it.
Yeah, that's
At the
true.
end of the day,
That's true. That's true. We got it. Yeah.
we've got this, we've got it. So we can't argue whether or not it was necessary or this, that, and the other. But the fact of the matter is, we've got this film, and by the end of it, you're still thinking, what did I learn? What more did I learn from the first film? And to be honest, the answer is absolutely really nothing by the
Nothing.
end
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's
No.
no there's no pure, well, there's an arc, but there's some form of closure. And again, we'll get back to that. But like it's and maybe that was it. And maybe that's the key word is closure, actually. Sorry, I feel like should we go spoiler now? I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
know.
Go spoilers. Yeah.
Do you want to
Spoilers.
do
Go
spoiler?
spoilers.
All
Yes.
right,
This is going
right.
to be
So for
spoilers.
people,
Yes.
yeah. All right. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, all I'll just quickly say is Joker
Go.
Folie Do is basically RoboCop 2. That's my review. Done. That's in a nutshell. Done. And then you can use that as a sound clip. There you go.
There you go.
But here's the spoiler. Yeah, here's the spoiler. Um, so Arthur Fleck dies. So
Mhm.
that's the closure to this um so-called franchise, these of this story. And I think maybe that was the thing that Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix wanted to do was actually give a sense of closure to this character because by the end of the first film, perhaps people felt a bit like, oh, okay, maybe that's not the right sense of closure that they hoped or thought it could be. Um,
For me, it
but then
was.
I'm thinking, well, yeah, this is what I mean. For me, it was as well. For me,
Yeah,
it
that
was as
was
well. I
enough
didn't
because it
need,
was like, yeah. Ah,
yeah, but
I didn't
to
think
tie
about
in with your point, which was, um, sometimes the mystery isn't needed to be resolved.
it.
Sometimes
Hmm.
just us having that idea of what happened next doesn't need to be fully answered. And I don't think
That's
we
right.
needed that with Joker, which is again why we don't really need to go into the whole should they or shouldn't they have not, because
No, no,
again,
no,
we've got
exactly.
it. But
We got it.
but we got it. We got no choice. We got it. It's Waters wanting money. That's it. Fine. So,
Yeah.
but the ending of Joker Folie à Deux is we basically have a background character who is seen throughout.
Yes.
And I did notice this character as well.
Same here. He
And
stuck out. Yeah. Like a
he
sore
did
thumb,
stuck.
he did.
Yes, yes. And by the end, and interesting enough, and this is the biggest thing I've been processing all day is their ending because I've seen a lot of talk online about people being upset and this and that and the other. And don't get me wrong, when I saw the ending, I just thought it was really poor, like really poor. So just to explain, Arthur has basically given up the persona of Joker. He said it's all on him. It was all Arthur Fleck. Joker never really existed. I am Arthur Fleck. I've always been Arthur Fleck.
Hmm.
He goes back to prison and he basically starts where he begins where he starts off at the beginning of the movie, which is feeling very down and very downbeat about him being Arthur Fleck and no longer Joker for 2 years, because this is 2 years after the first film. And we get essentially the same Arthur Fleck that we had from the very start of the film. And then by the end, we have this recurring character come up to him and say, oh, let me tell you this joke. It's about a psychopath and a clown. And I used to watch this clown, blah, 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 blah. There's the joke. And then he says, you get what you fucking deserve. And he kills him with a shiv, essentially stabs him several times, and he puts a smile on his face, creating a smile from one end of his cheek to the other, emulating basically the same Heath Ledger smile. And do you know what? It would have been interesting to have seen it for you to have been in that screening with me because the audience groaned. The audience let out a big groan because they all felt the same as I felt the same as them because we all just felt like it was a cheap shot, like a real cheap blow to say, "Oh, that's the Joker you thought it was the whole time. Here's the biggest joke. that's the Joker all this time. And it's like, well,
Mm.
no, that's that doesn't make us feel sorry for Arthur at all.
At all.
It doesn't
No,
make us
it
feel sorry
doesn't.
for
It
it at
doesn't.
all. It ultimately cheapens the movie and it cheapens the emotion that the film potentially or was trying to give us. And the one redeeming thing I can say, because having thought about it over over the span of today, is perhaps for Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix, having Arthur die in the way that he is first introduced, which is a clown or a person who has been beaten to the ground to the point where he doesn't know fully who he is supposed to be. And then by
Mm.
the end, he is lying in his own blood, not quite sure who he's supposed to be. You get that really interesting flashback back to the Joker and Harley show, because by the end, perhaps that was the true identity he should have chosen over the end, but by then it's too late, and someone else has
Mm.
taken the mantle of the Joker or a Joker. And Todd Phillips has been very clear in saying this is not the Joker, this is Joker. This is not the origin story. This is an origin story. And even DC have made it very clear this is an Elseworld
Elseworld
DC
story.
Black
Yeah,
Label
that's right.
film.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
right. Yeah,
Elseworld story.
yeah.
So, with that said, I can understand from a director's point of view and from a performer's point of view how that could be enticing to come back and to close off the story in that capacity. But by the end, does it feel right as an audience member watching it and knowing that what we had prior and how it was treated before and how it had this sense of identity
Yeah.
almost being too lost along the way? I don't think it does, unfortunately. And unfortunately, have is just think it's a shame. And even as I say, but it's honestly how I felt watching it is you feel you feel like shit. I mean, to be honest with you,
Mm.
if what I was supposed to be feeling was the intention or not, I don't know. That's the honest answer. I just don't know.
Horrible, right? It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah,
Oh, Rob, you still there? I think I've got you in a glitch. Oh.
yeah. Sorry, I've got you in a glitch too. Go on. You were saying?
Yeah, no, it's a horrible feeling is when it's like that because you treat something so with so much care, like what they did with the first one, to what
Mm,
happened in this one, and I
mm.
feel like, and I don't know why, I've got this weird gut feeling that we're gonna get a director's cut of this soon.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. I have no
Yeah,
doubt that
why
there will
is that?
be a
I've got
director's
this
cut.
weird sick feeling that there's a director's cut coming out, and usually I don't feel like that when you hear director's cut because you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna get more of a movie. I'm like, I don't like
Mm,
the way they're heading because I think director's cut for me personally, and I'm not a director, Rob is. Uh, when something comes out which was great at its time, I mean, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner is a perfect example. There's
mm.
like seven different cuts of this movie.
Yeah.
You know, one with the unicorn, one without the unicorn, one where they drive into the sunset, one with the
Mm,
narration, one without the narration. There's so many versions of this film, but it all still kind of leads to one thing.
yeah.
But I kind of enjoyed the fact that I could, like, 10 years down the line get a director's cut. And, they've started to do that with like how they did with the DC Universe and Zack Snyder, which, I don't know why they didn't release those versions in cinema. I think people would have enjoyed it more and give much more credit, but they feel like, oh, we put a shorter version and cut out all the main bits that don't make no sense,
Mm,
but does actually make sense. It's like I feel like we're coming to an era where we're getting that. I mean, same thing is happening on Netflix now with Zack Snyder stuff, and it's like is that a contract that he's put in there saying that look, put out the shit version first and then release
Mm,
the better version? Which, sorry to say, it's like they it just didn't work. I think, like you are a great visual artist, dude. With hands down, I want
mm,
if he was to direct an anime like Dragon Ball Z or
mm,
Fist of the North Star, he'd be amazing. But
mm,
yeah, Rebel Moon
mm.
just it didn't work. But coming off that, I feel like there's a director's
Yes.
cut gonna come out and they're gonna say that, and I'll be like, I'm not on that.
So in the question of the director's cut thing, I mean, I have no doubt that there probably is a form of director's cut because it has been mentioned that and I'm going to bring her up now because I feel
Yeah,
it's only right to, but um the one thing I didn't expect for this movie, and I know that sounds really patronizing to say it that way, but I I really wanted more of Lady Gaga's Harley Quinn. And I think there is more of that character
good.
in the cutting room floor.
There's
And
gotta be.
I think there is. And I think what I found astonishing as well is how underutilized she was. Um, for someone with, I mean, again, tying back in with the central identity crisis that this film has.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, because I feel like I've given away the biggest spoiler, by the way, of the ending. That
Yes.
everything else of this film is basically a recount of what the first film is. So if you've seen the first film, you're basically going to get the same accounts of the story again, but through different perspectives. But the biggest difference this time around is that you have essentially, and I think this is the biggest compliment as well I can give this film as well in terms of its story and or quote unquote story and script writing, which is the introduction of Harleen Quinzel,
Hmm.
aka Lee, in this film's version, and we get a form of mad love. Not
That's
our
right.
traditional kind of mad love, but it is a
That's
mad
right.
love regardless. And I do think there are other scenes. There are scenes definitely in the trailer that do not appear in the film. Um, I noticed that straight away.
Yep.
And I found it astonishing, again, to tie it back into the identity crisis thing. I found it astonishing for a film that says it wants to be a musical to then not utilize Lady Gaga's ability to sing every time she's on screen. I mean, my God. I mean, when she does sing, I actually am a fan of Lady Gaga. Um, I think she's a phenomenal singer, and I think when she's on screen and when she's doing her thing, what she does best, she is extraordinary.
Hmm.
And when you
Very.
have that combined with Harley Quinn, it's a wonderful mix. And I listened recently to another podcast, and um, Paul Dini was on it, and he explained how musicals and music was kind of a big inspiration for Harley Quinn. So when I hear that, and then obviously there's an animated TV series episode
Yeah,
where
yeah,
she
yeah.
literally is singing and dancing. I'm like, it's not unheard of for doing something like that. I mean,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
also in the case of this, and actually to tie it back in with the filmmaking approach of this as well, because our jobs at the end of the day is to challenge the expectations of what audiences want by telling a great story or at least an engaging story and
That's right.
something that has something to say. But it is about taking risks as well. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
not to do much of a plug here, by the way, but you recently were on set on something I did, which was about risks. Like we
Yes.
took so many swings with this
Hmm.
film, with Punching Bag, and I can confidently say I think it has paid off. Whereas this film, to take the approach of a comic book movie or quote unquote comic book movie and taking these characters and having the freedom to play, which I have no problem with, by the way. And again, another cheeky plug. I did exactly the same with my Batman film. I
Hmm.
turned
No,
Batman into a bad guy by the end. Everyone was really shocked when they saw that, and I was like, "Yeah, that's the point because we have to challenge that." And
of
it's the same
course.
approach with this film as well. We have to challenge the expectations of what people are expecting of these characters and this world and this depiction of what mad love is. So when you have these musical numbers, I was in pure delight. I
Yeah.
was in pure delight because, again, as I mentioned, love the references to Umbella to Shoeborg, love the references to Fred Astaire movies. I love the reference to Singing in the Rain. I love, um, yeah, and even even the smaller references to like early silent cinema as well. That was also
Hmm.
just a beautiful touch. But the moment for me where I think it peaked when it had its musical numbers moment was when you saw, and I hope he did this for real because it would have been really awesome for him as as an actor to have challenged himself to do this. But when Joker tap dances and he's literally tap dancing,
Yeah,
I thought that was extraordinary. I thought that was a wonderful moment. That is literally the peak of the, and it's sadly, and again, maybe this is what, do you know what's really funny, mate? I think throughout the day, and even talking to you now about this film, I'm beginning to think maybe this film isn't as bad as I think it is. But actually, I still retain the fact that it's still a bad film. But I do,
listen, it has
I'm
good
still gonna,
elements.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I mean. It has good elements. Yeah, you're right. It has
it
good
has good
Listen,
elements. Like
yeah,
we could praise it for the moments. Like my brother, he was saying on the previous on episode that's going to come out next week, guys,
right.
is that he appreciates what they did with the musical aspect of it. Sorry, Laura.
Yeah,
Uh, because he feels like it played a different part of their mental state
right.
and it worked for him. And he goes, there are
Yes.
certain key moments of the film where when they go into that element, I want to see more of that. I want to
Mm,
see the Joker tap dancing and being in his element. I want to see Harlequin doing what she's doing. But
yeah.
because it cuts in and out of those, as you said, to the real, it's really based in Arkham and
The
a
courthouse.
courtroom.
Oh,
Yeah, the
courtroom, sorry.
courthouse. Yeah, yeah. And when you get those little elements in between, you're like, why didn't they just? I just don't know why they just didn't go for the full blown, make it a musical, make it a spectacular
I
musical.
agree.
And I
I
think
agree.
it would have been absolutely awesome because you've got movies that have done this before. I think La La Land. I don't know why I adore that movie, man. I
Mm,
love that movie to bits. It worked with a like a straightforward story that goes with it, and about the creativity and about making sacrifices. And sometimes you
mm,
have to lose the people you love in the process of it. But the
yeah.
musical worked with the story.
Mm, mm,
They could have done that with this movie. Like they could have made it so good because those scenes were really good when they were singing with each other and when it was like
mm,
a like on the show and like I kept on thinking about the animated series and I was like, oh my god, like
mm,
this is like colorful, bright, and
yeah.
exactly what those scenes would have been with Harley and Joker. But they didn't go with it. They couldn't commit to it fully, and it was like they ended up
Yeah.
using the singing as a kind of a dialogue instead of
Well, actually, do you know what? That's really interesting that you've said about the singing, the musical elements as a dialogue, because I think that's where it worked in its favor.
yes.
But where it does falter is if you really think about it. Do you know what? Here's an exercise. Let's deconstruct Joker Folie à Deux in terms of its structure. If you
Mhm.
take those musical elements out, what you're basically left with is a courtroom drama, which is incredibly slow paced,
Mhm.
which basically tells you exactly what we need to know from the first film and all those elements anyway.
That's right.
And you basically just have a very dull experience when you really think about it.
Exactly. A very,
Having
very dull
those,
experience.
when you have the musical numbers in there and the musical moments in there, what you essentially have is the quote unquote action set pieces of the film. Because that's the thing that I was really struck by this film as well, to tie it back in with its budget as well. Kibbs, this is $150 million to $200 million movie, and yet we are grounded in essentially two spaces: the courtroom and Arkham, and then maybe Flex apartment here and there for certain bits, and then obviously the outside of Gotham, certain areas of Gotham, and that's it. We don't get the ground level grit of Gotham that we got in
In the
the
first one.
first Joker film.
That's
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And
Exactly that.
I and don't get me wrong, the approach that they've gone down is interesting, but in essence, that could have been 5 minutes. When you really think about it, it could have been 5 minutes. of the film. And then the rest of the movie could have just been, what if he got away with it? What if he escaped? What do you do when you've got the clown prince of crime and you've got Harley Quinn in this, who, in my opinion, is quite a dangerous
Character.
young woman,
Yes, very.
because she's a methodical liar. She's a psychiatrist.
That's right.
Um she plays Arthur like to like literally like a musical note, to the
Mhm.
point where, and again, that's the point. I think that's the point of this movie in that element as well, is that it's trying to do too much, but then also doing nothing at all. And then it's like, because that's why I was saying I don't understand by the end what it really wanted to say. Because even the commentary about mental health, the system fucking sucks. Oh, sorry. I just realized
No,
you.
no, it's fine. It's fine. It's all right. You're on the headphone.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
God.
so go for it. Go. That's why I got the headphones
No,
on.
no, good, good. Because literally, just for people for context, I always have to apologize every time I send a voice note, because I'm like, don't play this out loud. Um, but sorry, what was my point? It was to do with um oh, what was it I was
Oh
saying?
no, so I like so we with different like taking the movie apart, different
Yeah.
sections, and it was about Harlequin and the crucial part that she played to that story. But the movie
Mm,
really didn't kind of give us a feeling of care for
mm,
these characters, and I think
mm,
that's where it lost our attention, and where we feel like I connected with Arthur Fleck in the
mm,
first movie. I felt for him,
mm.
even though he did bad stuff. I
Yeah,
still
yeah,
feel
yeah.
for him because it was a system that the system that failed us. A system that fails us.
Yes,
The
this
system
was
is
it.
not built for us. The
Yes,
system.
that's it. That was my point. The system fucking sucks. And we get that. We get that from the first movie. And what they decide to do this time is bring justice and law and um an even bigger conversation, which is the treatment within Arkham itself.
Mhm,
Um Now, I'm going to be very, very, very careful with this next point that I'm going to be making,
mhm.
because again, it was interesting to see this with an audience, because I think we all felt the same way, which was there's only so far you could have gone.
Yeah.
But the moment when the police guards attack, and I'm only going to say attack here because what I originally thought might not be potentially true, and that might not be the intention. However, I read it as, and I'll say what I originally thought anyway, but I will just say I think it is purely an attack rather than suggested sexual attack
Mm,
that they do to Arthur at the end. Because to be honest with you, if it was just a pure attack, it's broken his spirit and his soul,
mm.
both physically and mentally. Because once they strip him of his costume, his makeup, literally, he's then left in his cell and he hears another inmate being killed to death when he's trying to defend him and sing
Yes,
out
that's
loud
right.
to him. And it's horrific. It's a
Mm.
horrific moment in the
Horrible.
film.
Yeah.
And the intention to break Arthur in that moment there, it works, but then it affects everything that we've seen prior with the first Joker film. And I
That's right.
think oh, that's where I checked out of the movie, I'm afraid. And
Mm.
I think that's where a lot of people checked out of the movie. Um and again, to tie it back in with the commentary of mental health in the system, it's not good enough. It wasn't good enough in the 80s, and it's not good enough now.
Exactly.
And um my problem, however, is whereas some people felt like the first movie may have exploited the idea that mental health turns people in this certain way, which I don't think it actually ever does, if I'm
No,
being completely honest with you.
no.
This film sadly might, however, suggest otherwise, which is
Yeah.
again the wrong approach. Again, I think is the wrong approach, especially when you get to the moment when Arthur completely breaks down. And and where Harley leaves the courtroom as well, because she's in love with Joker.
Mm.
She's not in love with Arthur.
That's right.
And then to find out afterwards it's not who, and it's again a play on the DC fandom. And anyone who is a DC fan, like you and we both, I think, went in with complete different expectations, but also we went in not thinking this is going to be like a DC film. Do you know what I mean? Like
No, no, of course not.
it's
I
its
think
own thing. It's its own thing. It's its own
exactly
Elseworld.
that. It's an Elseworld story. I've always seen it that way. Matt Reeves'
Yeah.
universe is Elseworld. Like.
Mm. And I think that's the biggest thing I would say to people going into seeing this film is please see it as its own thing. Because I think the
Yeah.
perception that a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why people are hating this movie is because they feel like it shits on Joker, which I don't think it does. I think
Oh, it doesn't.
ultimately, I don't think it does. I think what it ultimately does do, however, especially with the ending with the slitting of the mouth and,
Hmm.
all that stuff,
That's a
is
big FU. I feel like that was a big FU. That was the FU
that's
statement.
yeah, I would say that's almost a little bit of a middle finger.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And again, it's a touch too far.
Definitely.
It's and again, and I mean this just from my own experience of things. Um so tying it back from a point that you made earlier about direction and the director. At the end of the day, he has written this and he has, I think he is producer of this as well, and he also of course directed
Oh,
this,
wow.
and he is
Okay.
ultimately the author of the piece for this one. And I've always found Todd Phillips to be quite a mean-spirited director. If you've seen the Hangover movies and you've seen the film Due Date,
Hmm.
um then you'll know what I mean exactly by that.
Yeah.
um with this film, and again, to tie it back to the RoboCop 2 analogy, just because you've been given more money and more freedom to play doesn't mean you shouldn't have someone looking over your shoulder to say, "Hold on there, man. Hold on. Really
Oh,
think
yeah.
about
That's
this."
interesting. That is very interesting because as a creative, we get carried away. Of course we do.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
throw ink all over the place. So, like,
yeah,
somebody should say, Kibbs, that's a bit too much ink. You're right.
yeah,
Having somebody over your shoulder to kind of check you and say, you know what, hold up.
yeah,
You've introduced a new audience to the Joker.
yeah.
How do we kind of keep to that? And I feel like you're right. Because he's produced it, he's got the more money for it. He's
Mm,
kind of gone buck wild on this, and he's like,
yeah.
you know what? I'm just gonna be as creative and try and be as avant-garde as I can, and
Mm,
try and
mm.
create something. Which you know what? I can't blame him for, but you're right. Like, where was somebody to say, James Gunn, man, come on, bro, like
There's
you there,
nothing
man, come
wrong.
on.
This is the thing, and I have to, and I feel like I have to come back to this point again, which is there's nothing wrong with taking risks.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's part of the process.
Yes,
And
definitely.
but I just feel like, do you know what? Let's tie it to another movie that I just thought of, which is Batman Returns. Probably not
Mhm.
the best example, but I will give this example. When you give Tim Burton too much freedom to play, and then you get too much, you get essentially a film that focuses more on the villains than on the Batman character himself, which is what has been
Mhm.
always my biggest issue with Batman Returns, which is
Mhm.
I don't ever feel like I care about Bruce's story, even though
No.
his name is in the title, you know? And you know what I mean? He's returned, but not quite, you know?
No, no, no.
Um, and look, I know that the whole thing of villains are the most interesting characters and everything. Of course, I mean, look, we've got Joker for God's sake.
Exactly.
But to not have, again, having someone over your shoulder is a really important thing in regards to the work that we do. And I know people discredit producers a lot of the time, but actually, the right producer who will actually shape you to be better and support you to be better, both on a financial point of view, but from a creative point of view, that's the dream team that you can have. Whereas with this one, it almost feels like people just assumed that Todd could just
So,
do
yeah,
and take those swings. And look, mix it up, do that. The musical element Joker and Harley Quinn, it really works when it really works. Some moments it didn't quite work, but when it really works, it really works. And
that's right.
I would have loved, in hindsight, to have seen an Umbrellas of Cherbourg version of Joker, rather than a courtroom drama which happens to have musical numbers. And I can't believe I'm saying which happens to have, because even the film itself does isn't quite sure if it wants to be a musical or not.
Yeah, no,
But
I mean, definitely, without a doubt, it didn't go with it, and it was like they
mm,
could have gone with it, and I feel like some of the scenes in the courtroom just didn't. It just fell flat on its face, and it was like, oh man, this could have been, the Mr. Puddles scene. I don't know why that annoyed me so much, but he stayed on
oh,
it for far too long.
so
Puddles, puddles, puddles,
yeah.
puddles, and I was like, come on, like move on from there. But I
Mm.
felt like he stayed on that for too long for me to kind of enjoy the character he was bringing out.
So what's really interesting about that scene is I agree, goes on far, far too long. It's incredibly overly written for
Yeah,
what it needs to do. And again, I'll say this again. The courtroom drama stuff could have just maybe been 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, and we could have gone
exactly.
elsewhere. But it's not. It's at least half the movie. Um, but I think Lee Gill, who plays Gary Puddles, I think he might be probably. Oh, do I want to say that? Yeah, I will. I think he's probably the best actor in the film. I will. I'll do. That's my hot take. Because
I
those
can
scenes
agree with.
which he is in, when he's saying to him, "This isn't you, Arthur. This isn't you.
Yeah,
Like you were my only friend. You
yeah.
were the only one that never made fun of me." And
You felt it.
I feel that.
I felt you
I
felt that. Yeah,
felt
yeah. I
that.
felt that.
And again, I was like, but this is supposed to be this movie.
Yeah.
And yet, but yeah, that I'll
Oh
take that. I'll take that hot take. I'll take that hot take. It's
no, definitely, definitely. All right, Rob. I'm not going to keep you any longer. It's always great to
mm-hmm.
catch up with you. I did want to
Sure.
touch base on one thing. So, guys, go. It's up to you. If you guys go watch it, go watch it. If you've already heard all of our spoilers, then I'm apologizing now. And you probably didn't want to see it from the beginning, to be honest, because a lot of you don't go to the cinema. Come on, get in the
Mm,
cinema. We need people. We need people in the cinema. But
absolutely.
I'm gonna segue into it. We did talk about it slightly in the middle. How's Punching
Mm-hmm.
Bag coming along, dude?
Dude, it's getting there. It's
Good.
getting there, man. I mean, the last time we spoke was actually on another show that you've done called Cup of Comics, and
Yes.
that was before we shot. We've now shot. You were there, and I can honestly say that we have a movie here.
Ooh,
We do.
so
We do.
excited. So
We
excited.
do.
So
We
excited.
do. There's, it was an extraordinary 3 days. It was a tough 3 days, but it was an extraordinary 3 days. And I felt quite bad at points because I mean, even though I found it really nice of you to say, no, no, you're in your zone. I love seeing you in your zone. You're in your
Yeah,
place.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that was nice of you to say, but I also felt really bad that I didn't like get to say, hey, or let's chat or this. And
No,
because
bro.
obviously I was in,
Don't.
but it was, but as you saw, there was a lot going on, but there was
Of
also
course, of course.
it was you know you throw yourself a lot into the work that you do, and I
Hmm.
felt like there was a piece of myself on that day which has now been burnt into the film, which I think it literally and figuratively. And I I feel incredibly blessed to have the family slash crew, I should say, who worked on that set, because they absolutely smashed it
I
as
know.
a crew, and I couldn't be any more prouder of every single member who was on that set for those 3 days, because they were incredibly patient, but they were also hardworking. And I remember saying to you before about this discipline of filmmaking, which I think has been lost for some time. The moment we had that camera, that Super 16 camera, which you got to see yourself and seeing it actively work, and you saw Stephen literally carrying it on his
Yeah, sick,
shoulders.
bro. So
Yeah, it
cool.
was,
So cool.
but everyone lifted their game.
Mm.
And that's the thing about working on film, which I think has been completely lost in the digital age of filmmaking right now. And interestingly, Joker is shot on digital, and it's a beautiful crafted piece of um, cinema in places. And I had to
Hmm.
say in places there
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
you know I'm not gonna say it's a whatever, but in places. Whereas I think, and I'm not trying to big myself up too much here, but like I think that level of discipline that we gave ourselves ultimately put pressure on us, but it ultimately made us stronger because as creatives, there is a fine level of balance for putting pressure on ourselves to be better. And then when you get to that pressure point in the cooker to then say, how do I either turn myself down and let it be, or do I go to an extra level where I can, just put the pan on for a little bit more to sizzle even more and then get
Mm,
that that cooking, that cooking feeling.
so
And
good.
then just being able to turn it off to say, cut there, and that way we haven't overcooked it. And you
Yeah.
know what? That's probably the best way I can sum up Joker Folie Do is that it is a film that has been overcooked by its own success to the point where
Ooh.
we didn't need this second film because it does somewhat tarnish the success of the first film, which did make it so special.
Mm.
And sadly, it has tarnished that now. And um, yeah, it's going to be one of those films in years' time that people will like look back on and think, we're not going to do another RoboCop 2 again.
Oh, listen, man, it's great to hear. Um, I'm loving the behind the scene photos. I'll share some on the
Yeah.
channel as well. But like, it's always nice to see and being on set as well. And as I said that day, like seeing your element was nice. I had a really shitty, tough week that that week as well. So
Mm.
coming on there kind of gave me inspiration again on being
Oh.
creative and being stuck in the zone again.
Mm.
And which it has because I've made some big steps in my life. But seeing you
Mm.
guys do your work and seeing the stills as well was absolutely amazing. And
Mm.
I have a little, little cameo, which is absolutely
Mm.
amazing.
You do.
I
You
can't
do.
wait. I can't wait to have. I got my Stanley cameo. No, I'm joking. Uh,
Oh.
but like, it's super exciting to see somebody in that element as well, guys.
Mm.
And like, I just want to let you guys know, like, you'll see it all over our channels anyway. I'm super excited for this, and the fact that it's happened. Oh my God, I can't believe it. 2 years down the
It's
line.
yeah, in the
It's
can.
happened. Oh my
Yeah, yeah,
God.
yeah.
And you did it on film as well, which is just
We did.
you
Yeah.
bring back that element that started it all off. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
as much as
Yeah,
I
yeah, no,
love
it's
digital, but it's like film is like like it's slowly not it's some artists are bringing it back,
mm,
but it was one of those things where it was slowly getting phased out and it was like,
yeah.
oh, it doesn't have that authentic look anymore. You made
It's
a really big choice doing that as well.
yeah, and I mean I remember I showed you at Batman Unmasked a still of
Yeah.
a particular moment and even you said, yeah, yeah, I know why. Yeah. Um I think yeah, and to add to your point, film is history.
hmm
There's it's a chemical process and it's a scientific process and I think that is something that's been completely lost and I know people will look at it and think, oh, it's a niche thing to film on film. Isn't it niche? Isn't it this? And blah, blah, blah. But to me, there's an organic relationship to the story that I'm trying to tell. And to
hmm
do it on digital, where we have got to a point in digital where it looks so crisp and it looks so clean, is the key
Too clean.
word I use there,
Too clean for me.
to the point where we don't necessarily feel something when something's so clean,
hmm
and that's how I describe the viewing experience of watching something on digital now. And there are certain, there are so many examples of digital films that or films shot on digital that work perfectly well, of course. But I do think that there is something, and I'm gonna sound like such a pretentious arsehole for saying it like this, but forgive me. But there is something really spiritual about shooting on film because everyone feels that energy of fuck, we got to raise our game because there's literally money running in that camera right now. There's That film stock is
frame by frame. That's a cost
yeah,
frame by frame.
that's yeah, literally, dude. This is how disciplined we were by the end. We bought 12 color cans, six or seven black and white cans. We shot on two black and white cans, and we shot on nine color cans. And this is for a
Wow.
boxing film. So we still had some cans left over, but we were so disciplined and we knew exactly what we were doing.
Perfect.
Um,
Perfect. That's
we
always great
knew,
because
yeah.
I always ask, like, when you speak to like getting to speak to directors and people in that field, and you ask them about that process, and
Mm,
it's like you the way you've written the story,
yes.
and you made me visualize that, so I can
Mm,
only imagine when I see what you've done, and
mm,
when you see it frame by frame, when you see it on the screen, and it's like I always ask them, like, when you were doing the writing, and you sometimes feel like you write so well
mm,
it could be improvised.
mm,
So you're like, oh my God, did you improvise that moment? Did you improvise that? But now that I've read it, I'm like, oh my
yeah.
God, the writing's so tight.
Mm,
No, how do you like? I always ask, like, how does somebody do that? And I think it's an interesting because maybe deep down within me, I probably wanted to be an actor. I think I should have been.
mm,
And when I read, like, I'm actually currently working on something at the moment now,
right.
with uh the guy who, so basically somebody who saw our video of punching back,
Okay.
who reached out from the States. I'm
Oh,
working on
amazing.
something with him, and I'm doing some concept artwork for his film.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, that's
And it
awesome.
made me kind of think about how you visualized it and how you wrote it,
Mm,
and then reading his story for me to try and visualize it and trying to
mm,
understand key points of it. And like I'm starting to work on it, and it's like, wow, this is like such an amazing process. And but the acting part of it as well, it was like I'm acting out scenes as I'm reading
yeah.
it. And it's like, oh my God, like
Mm.
this has got me in a different zone right now, which I absolutely think is something I've been wanting to do, and I never got to do it. And now that I'm
Mm,
doing it, I still can't believe it.
mm.
And that's
That's an amazing
amazing. And
feeling to have,
yeah,
isn't it?
dude, like insane. Like
Mm.
I'll show you some behind the scenes,
Yeah, 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 of course.
but it's
Uh,
like, yeah, absolutely insane. But
yeah.
dude,
Um,
Rob,
yeah.
I thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna, because I know we both got caught and I've got to put the kids to sleep, and I'm getting the eye from wifey. So,
Yeah, yeah, all
uh,
good.
uh, last thoughts, Joker.
Okay. In a nutshell, it's a beautifully made, glorified cash grab, which is so lost in its identity that it loses focus of what made the first film so remarkably special. And in the end, what we have is Todd Phillips's RoboCop 2.
Ooh, listen, it's the honest truth, and I'm agreeing here with Rob, and I'm a guy who loves everything. I do love it, and I
Mm,
do love it for the process behind it, the people that worked on it, the creativity, the look of it,
mm,
all of that stuff, 100%. But give me something that I'm gonna go home and maybe even cry about because I connected with that character. When you
mm,
connect with a character on the screen, you have gone on the journey with that character, and I think that's the
mm,
important part for me as an audience member is that I want to be Sarah Connor. I want to be Kyle Reese. I want to go on that journey and that chase together. So
mm,
make me connect to those characters. And I think that, as you said, it lost this identity of what it was going to be. And because if you're going to be a full blown Arkham story, then go with the Arkham story and him
mm,
meeting
mm.
Harley. If you wanted it to be a musical, you could have done that. But he's
Yeah.
bold for the choices that he made to make this movie because that was one of the quotes I saw. Bold and brilliance. But I don't know about brilliance. Bold, definitely. And I think, as you said, taking risk in cinema is like one of the biggest things. It's either going to work or not work, but you're going to learn something. And
Yeah.
I suppose this is not even a review. This is a constructive feedback.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
this is
it's definitely
constructive
a
feedback. Yeah.
it's definitely a critical analysis. That's what
Yes,
we've basically
definitely.
done. We have
Yes.
basically dissected the film. I mean, we could spend a whole 5 hours talking
Oh
about
yeah,
this.
exactly.
I mean, we're not. Just to clarify, we're
Don't
not.
worry, guys. Don't worry,
Yeah.
guys. But
An hour's been enough, trust me.
now listen, thank you so much, Rob.
No,
Punch Your
thank
Bag
you.
coming out soon. Punch Your Bag
Mm.
coming out soon, coming soon. So keep an eye on the channels. Follow Rob on his journey. All his details are below. I did actually watch a movie the other day of yours,
Oh,
which I stumbled on Instagram, and I went into the profile. And I was like, I haven't seen this lovely website. Uh, so go check it out. He's got all of his short movies all on there. I can't remember what it's called now. It's gone off the top of my head. It's about the creative writer going to dinner.
creative writer going to dinner. Oh my God, which one is that? I can't remember which one that is. Oh, Dreaming Whilst Black.
Yes.
Oh, Dreaming Whilst Black. Sorry,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Dreaming
Yeah.
Whilst Black. Oh my God,
Which
so
is
good.
now, dude, that's the BBC A24 series.
What?
Yeah, did you not know that?
No?
Yeah. So just I feel like we've expanded this. So I'll be brief. I'll be brief.
No, no, no.
So there's a TV show on BBC Three called Dreaming Whilst Black, um, and it's written and by two of my mates, Ajani Salmon and Ali Hughes. Ali is literally he's literally through that door over there. Um, and yeah, it's written by those two and it stars Ajani. And he created a web series way back in 2018. And my episode, I directed one of the episodes for that show, and it ended up getting picked up for the BBC and A24. So I'm a very small cog in that machine of BBC A24's production of Dreaming Whilst Black, and they've just done season one. It was BAFTA nominated, and Ajani went on to
Um,
win the BAFTA for Best New Writer. So, um, yeah,
I need that.
it's a very special project. So, yeah, a little bit of a trivia, Rob Ailing trivia there. I'm a small cog in the Dreamy Mars Black
That was
machine.
so good. I fully enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Great direction, dude. I love your
thank you.
visuals. Uh, okay, I've got something to watch now.
Yeah,
That's definite. That's so cool. That is so
yeah.
cool. I love it. I love it. Uh, Rob, as always, man, it's always a pleasure. I know I'm going to see you in the next couple of days or in the
Oh,
week, in the
absolutely.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, Definitely going back to Batman on Mars. There's a couple of things I missed. Uh,
nice.
I'll check that out again. Uh, but yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And
you, man. It's
yes,
always
we
a
will
pleasure.
catch up. Ah, thank you so much, bro. Have a good evening,
You
man.
too,
This was
man.
brilliant. All right, cool.
Cool. Take care,
Let
man.
me
Bye.
take it. I'll stop this.